They want AI to design new types of molecules to better deliver the gene therapies to different tissues.
Yes, that's correct. Using AI to design new delivery methods for gene therapies is an innovative approach that could revolutionize the field.
Ben, I really appreciate the idea, but after COVID, I feel like we're going to be a long way from people being like, yeah, give it to me in gene therapy.
I'll take it first. I'll tell you how it works out.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. We have a really interesting and different type of podcast today. In today's episodes, we're going to dive deep into a fascinating and pretty mind-bending conversation that I had with Dr. Ben Goertzel. And he's one of the world's foremost voices in artificial intelligence and advanced technologies. And we're really joined by, well, a pretty special guest. It's Desdemona, and Desi, as she is known, is a robot powered by artificial intelligence. If you've ever wondered how AI might reshape our future, not just in practical ways, but in how we live, think, and even feel, this episode is for you. I have to admit, a lot of this stuff I innately want to push back on. I feel like the fact that we haven't figured out our food system and dirt and how to connect with one another does make me somebody who is really reluctant when it comes to AI and robots. And that's why I'm trying to keep an open mind. And Dr. Goertzel really takes us on a journey from his early inspirations in science fiction to his current groundbreaking projects, like creating robots like Desi with artistic expression, she sings, and exploring how AI could help us live longer, healthier lives. We also discuss profound questions about human connection, like I was talking about, consciousness, and what it means to balance our advancements with our natural world. This is more than a conversation about technology. It's about our shared future, and the decisions we make today, they really will shape humanity for generations to come. So trust me, if nothing else, you're going to walk away with new perspectives like I did and a lot to think about. So settle in and let's explore the intersections of technology, creativity, and what it truly means to be human. So welcome to the Gabby Reece Show. I'll keep an open mind. You keep an open mind, and take what works for you, and we'll just see how the rest goes. Let's go. Hi, everyone. So this is the first time I'm doing this. I am doing a pre-interview before we go to the main part of the podcast with Ben Goertzel. And the reason I'm doing this is because when I finished that interview, I felt unsatisfied. I felt like I wasn't informed enough on how to ask the specific questions of Ben. And so I called a friend of mine, Kai, who also works alongside Ben. He could share his reasons why he's excited about Ben's approach to AGI and AI. To sort of have another conversation, a pre-conversation around artificial intelligence and artificial AGI, artificial general intelligence. We hear it all the time. We think we understand what's going on. But the reality is I don't think that we do. And with the exception of people who this is what they do, I thought Kai would be a really helpful guest just to have another conversation, a pre-conversation. So Kai, what right now do you see in AI in the ways that it is supporting or interesting for health and wellness? And what do you see, let's say it's a year out? Because a lot of times you'll say, like, you'll hear, oh, there's going to be this and this, and the timeline could be 10 to 30 years. I think from first and foremost, and Ben, we get into it a little bit, but what is it right now that you go, wow, this really is making a difference or can make a difference for either medical or health and wellness, and it's something that's we're like right there?
Well, the conversation about AI, my previous answer I just said about going on this Science Scout tour for what's I think about a decade. It started with a conference that had one of the most famous AI scientists in the world, Ray Kurzweil. And he made a presentation that stuck with me. And I think it was probably one of the very first lectures I ever saw on any of this subject. And he was talking about how there's something called a singularity, that is pending, whether it's at the time people debated about whether it would be in 30 years or 50 years or 10 years. So it was this off in the distance kind of idea. And then he also referenced that AI would eventually be so smart that it would be comparable to a human and a goldfish in a tank. So we would be the goldfish, the AI would be the human. Like, that's the level. And when I left that conference, I didn't have it was an uneasy feeling for me thinking about that, because it would be so far beyond our comprehension. And over the last few years, and I think especially in the last 6 months, you've seen AI just rapidly advancing. And the reason why we have to really pay attention to this, and that your audience would find it valuable to start to have that conversation with somebody like a Ben Goertzel, who is one of the top AI scientists in the world, who also happens to be a very kind human who focuses on the ethical development of AI and creating what he would describe as benevolent AI, which becomes more and more important when you consider the idea of a human and a goldfish sort of scenario in the far off future, or maybe not so far off future. I guess what I would bring it back to, Gabby, is they all talk about this bell curve. So, you go like this, and all of a sudden, once it starts really shooting up, it's faster and faster and faster, because the AI itself becomes smarter and smarter. It can code for itself. It can self-replicate and create smarter versions of itself. So now, for example, in the news, I just saw that there was a meeting happening in Washington, D.C. at the end of January, talking about how quickly the AI is advancing, to now it's getting to the point where you've heard of agentic AIs, or these new AI agents that are coming out. And the idea now is that has gotten to the point where they're talking about a PhD level, whereas before it was a lower level than that. So I think it's important for us all not to just focus on where AI is right now, but also the conversation of what does this look like in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years? And more importantly, also, does our leadership, are they talking about this kind of stuff? And there's some terms that are important to know. And in the health and wellness world, for example, there's terms that most people don't know about that are really important, like autophagy, right? Most people don't know what autophagy is, but it's an extremely important word. Or they don't know what a sirtuin is, or a senescent cell, for example. They've never heard of those things, but they're very important things for longevity. And I think some of the keywords, if you're going to be talking about where AI is now or in the future, you'd be talking about words like, what is the singularity? What is AGI? And that's why it's especially important to have these conversations. I really applaud you, Gabby, for pivoting a little bit to get into the AI space and focus on it, because it is here whether we accept it or not. And this conversation that you're going to have with Ben, and I hope you continue to have him back, because he's a great resource. The conversation, it's a little hard to understand some of it, because you're talking about philosophical things. You're talking about ideas that we've never really explored before, and now they're here. And so I would just kind of say to your followers that in this particular episode, sort of be ready for some completely different ways of thinking in terms of how the science is evolving and where it might be going. Now, to your question too, you asked me about how it goes to health. One of Ben's companies that I like and that I've connected with, they're using AI for health to rapidly develop supplements and products for longevity. And the AI is tremendous in that way, that it can figure all these things out. So excited about this product, this brain health formula that they mentioned, I think, in the podcast, that has shown some really tremendous results. It's all generally recognized as safe ingredients. They have great leadership over there, Dr. Kennedy Shaw, who's heading that up. And so we're going to have a lot of advancements. I talk to my mom a lot, and I tell her, hey, listen, if you can just stay alive for another 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot is going to change. So we use that as motivation for her to take the NMN and resveratrol and the intermittent fasting and a number of other products that we support and we think are good. So yeah.
I have a friend who actually takes all their blood work, and they even did it. Another friend did it with their dog's blood work and put it into the AI, and the AI came up with like 3 to 5 scenarios, and one of them was actually correct. So that I thought, oh, that's sort of interesting. And just to your point, I when you talked about singularity, just for people to hear it from Google, the singularity is a hypothetical point in time when technology becomes an uncontrollable and irreversible, leading to unpredictable consequences. Now, I have to just tell you, as like a simpleton who lives with somebody who's even more sort of in nature, I just don't think there's any way that we get our brain around that somehow we won't be able to turn things off. You know what I mean? Like, people who are in this space are like, oh yeah. And I never understand also why the smartest people are all really infatuated with living forever and leaving the planet. Like, you go, what do they know? Like, what the hell is going on that they, instead of like using all of this, I always think, well, why can't we clean up the air or the soil? And everyone's like, we're going to build a colony out in Mars. And I think, okay, so I guess for me, that's not one of the hurdles, but it's one of the things where it takes a second to actually take what you're saying so serious. When you talk about Kurzweil talking about us being the goldfish, I think we can't imagine that.
Yeah, I think that you're right. It is hard to imagine or to play, let's say, 3-dimensional chess when everyone else is playing checkers. It's hard to see the forest through the trees, all those kinds of ways of saying it. But it's a lot of times, and I was actually talking to Ben about this, and he was saying, well, people will see Chat GPT 3.5 and then they'll see 4.0 and they'll think, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And as it comes to them, they deal with it. What you're talking about is, where is this headed?
Yeah.
Where is it going? Because if you were to ask scientists that develop AI, and there was a letter, by the way, about this where they were talking about, hey, maybe we should pump the brakes for a minute.
And they only said this letter was in, I think, 2023, and they were like asking for a 6-month pause.
Yeah, and
they weren't even. They weren't even saying.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to
interrupt. No, because I heard one of the analogies was like, if the Model T was just created, and now all of a sudden we expect everyone to drive on the freeway going 80. Like, they're like, we want to hit a pause because we want people to kind of catch up and start to really understand what it is that is happening here.
Yeah. And I think that, again, that's why it's so important that we're talking to Ben, and that I think that your audience getting introduced to him and to other AI scientists that you're looking to bring on is invaluable. And what Ben's focus is really doing this in an ethical way, which is critical. And he's focused also on decentralized AI versus centralized AI. So if you could imagine a company owning a very powerful AI or everyone having access to it. So those are really important distinctions for me of why I kind of reached out and try to find ways to support that type of decentralized, own your own data. Is it on the blockchain? These terms that maybe your audience might not be completely familiar with because they're new. A lot of people still don't know what blockchain is, like what that means.
Yeah.
And I would say that on this AI conversation, if you were to ask many of the scientists, they would tell you that they need to keep developing it, because if they don't, then these other governments will, or this other company will. And so it's this race where everyone's pushing to develop more and more advanced AI. And the leaders really are the ones that you would want to hear talking about terms like the singularity. And I haven't really heard much of the leadership bringing that up. We talk about the economy, we talk about other things, and it's good that you are looking to continue to figure out this topic and understand all of the different angles there. So I applaud you for making that effort, Gabby, because not a lot of people are even bringing up that kind of idea. So I appreciate that you are.
Well, listen, Kai. I'm interested in the world around me, and I heard a great quote that like we don't live in the world we're born to, and so even sometimes you can explain it to me, and even for me to get my head around it, it's still, again, I'm from the school of, well, you can just turn it off, and it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, so for example, and I walk on all of this really respectfully, but in the definition of singularity, it says, in nature's social systems, in natural sciences, a singularity describes a system where a small change, which is what we're talking about, right, can have a huge impact. And the implications is the singularity could have catastrophic implications for humanity, such as misinformation and disinformation created by AI. However, there could be a lot of incredible opportunities for humanity to transcend limitations. So I think that's like true to so many things. It's just the way we behave often as humans doesn't always show up. I think like, oh, let's do it for the greater good. So I want to reemphasize that is one of the pushes that Ben has, which is having it in this decentralized blockchain. So, there's sort of a checks and balance in that. And then the other interesting thing that I talk with him about, but I'd like to drill in a little more, is the twin protocol. So basically, you're sort of saying, hey, listen, it's just a matter of moments until your twin's going to be out there. We want you to own it and, protect it. It's encrypted, all these things, and help support you in the back end of that. So maybe you could just, because people hear it, and I understand it for like someone like me, where I could actually use my twin, to do certain things. But maybe you could just share how people, in a positive way, we will be able to use their twin, and then also how maybe someone like you and what Ben is doing can support them.
Yeah. So who I am and what I'm about is I care a lot about health and wellness, and I'm always curious to find out what's next. And then I try to surround myself with people that understand a lot more than I do. And if I can relay some of that, I do. So I'm with a grain of salt. I'm not the AI expert. I'm around a lot of AI experts, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this as well. And I'm speaking to you and your audience in that way. What the Twin Protocol conversation is about, and Twin Protocol is a company, twinprotocol.com. I have taken a role within that company because I believe that it's important to have a twin. And what I mean by that is that right now, I don't know if I might have lost you for a second there. Hey, sorry, I think I might have snapped out for a second.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so so to answer your question, Gabby, about twin protocol or the twins and that kind of thing, I'm somebody who is always looking for what's ahead of us. And as I started to see this conversation about twins, it's important for people to be aware of this for a number of reasons. One is that it's easier than ever to essentially fake who you are. There's going to be a lot of potential fraud that's going to come out, and identity theft, where people, if you have a picture or video or some words of you online, it's not difficult to make a copy now. The technology's there where it looks very realistic, and it can look like you, sound like you, talk like you, act like you. that's what's coming. Whether we accept it or not, it is coming. In 6 months from now, a year from now, I think it's going to be a lot more common. People are going to understand that these twins are out there, and it might not be you, your digital twin. So the idea with Twin Protocol, what Ben is doing with it, and it's also led by founder Bill Inman, who is a blockchain entrepreneur and a credible good guy. And then they have a female CEO, which I like. Her name is Stacey Engel, who's an IP expert. What they're doing is they're saying, all right, you want to have a verified twin. That's your verified twin. You want to take your data that you approve of and put it in that vault, an encrypted vault, so that your twin is referencing your data, and people know that when they interact with that twin, that you've signed off on it. And by the way, you want to make sure that you own your data, so that data coming in is yours. And that's something that we haven't been doing as a society. You don't own your data. It's sold off all over the place. And there's a big emphasis now on owning your data. So that's why I think that the twin is important to be thinking about. And so for somebody like you, it's extremely important because you're out there, your name, likeness, and image is really out there. But I would also say there's some great opportunities too, if you have an aging parent, or if you have, there are other use cases where now your mother could start to download all her stories and in her voice, and you can have someone from your family that's maybe aging, or maybe just as a backup plan, that there would be a way to stay connected in some way, even if it's not 100% how it used to be. It's kind of an upgrade in the sense that it used to be just pictures and a story. Now you could have their actual voice, and you could have conversations. As strange as that sounds, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
And that's why I like what Twin is doing, because they're focused on making sure that your data is protected, verified, that you own it. And from what I've seen out there, that's a bit different than some of the other ones that are coming out. And I think you got to really watch out for some of this identity theft.
Yeah. And so basically what I hear over and over from you and from Ben is that they, besides wanting, to do this ethically and, benevolent AI, is giving people agency over, their stuff, if you will. I can't help but think it's going to be people back in back alleys and stuff written down on papers, like the technology is going to get so radical that now people will be like, the only way I believe that this is going to be a deal is if we do it person to person, eyeball to eyeball, shake hands. And, like it'll be, someone was saying that in order to be well known years ago, you had to have some kind of talent, right? Even whatever that means. And now you can be famous without talent, right? You can do this thing. And so the guy's like, what's going to become really popular is that nobody knows who you are. Like, it's like our world's all this technology is also going to flip us, right? This other way in certain ways. Like the things we'll covet is going to be like privacy, and nobody knows me. It'll be like, how did you do that? It's, I find that so interesting. Okay. So I don't want to keep you too long.
Well, if I could expand on what you just said briefly.
Yeah.
I think you're right that it's going back to analog in some ways for authentic human communication and relationships. And that's really, really important. You referenced at the beginning of this conversation that we had talked about vibration and the bees. I don't know, I'm wearing a bee shirt. I like bees a lot. And I found that in my searching for all these new products, and that's kind of what I do, is I find products. And it was amazing how the stuff we thought was high tech, but then we get to the earth and that's actually really high tech. So just getting your bare feet on the ground is high tech. Being around bees and their vibration. I've been hearing a lot about how beekeepers have some great health results from just the vibration of the bees that they're emitting, and let's say natural spring water out of the earth that hasn't been tampered with is high tech. I once went to a water conference for 3 days with 2 Nobel Prize winners, and they talked about water for 3 days. And by the time I left, I only knew one thing: we still don't know that much about water. There's like a lot going on. And so now that the AI stuff is just rapidly advancing, I feel like we have to dive in one way or another. And your audience with this episode is going to take a step into a conversation with you about AI. And it's going to be a bit out there, and Ben is a self described hippie. He's I think he mentions that he's tried different psychedelics at different points of his time and things like that. And but he's also somebody that cares about humanity and is kind. I went to an AGI conference that he held, and you'd be amazed that so much of it was about the ethical development. It was just really heavy on the ethical development of AI, because they understand how powerful this is. And if I think people want to get involved or start to raise questions about the direction of it all, or if they have concerns, these subjects and these words are good to bring up with your local leadership or governance of, what is the governor's stance on the singularity? Do they have one?
Yeah.
They might not. And so again, I applaud that you are taking these steps. And I think that people are going to be in for a bit of an interesting take with this first conversation. And I hope that it just continues to evolve and we're aware of everything as we do it, so that we don't, I guess, find out things before it's too far gone. Because at some point, if you read that singularity quote, it kind of says that, well, you can imagine if you're a human standing next to a fish in a fish tank.
Yeah.
What that's like.
Well, and it's interesting. I was just listening to somebody who was worked programming at OpenAI, and now he's doing something else. And he was talking about how, Chat GPT, everybody goes, oh, it's 3, it's 3.5, it's 4, but really that 1 or 0.5 is going to be able to go ahead of 4 because of the learning that's going on all the time. So it's almost like in things, unless you understand it, you don't actually really understand even how things advance, not in this linear way in technology. That's sort of interesting. So you mentioned Ray Kurzweil. Are there any books or people besides Ben in this space that you like learning from?
I think that I am along the same lines of you right now, Gabby. Like we're both getting into the water on this. I think I've got maybe a 6-month head start on you in terms of like going to these conferences and things of that nature. Kurzweil was the first one that I really said, whoa. And that was, but granted, that was a long time ago that I saw this, and I sort of thought, maybe this is going to happen in 30 years. And then all of a sudden it became upon us. And I actually had met Ben previously. We were speaking at a major conference in Asia, and Ben had come out of Hong Kong. He developed Sophia the robot there, and he was quite famous. And when I met Ben, he's this understated guy. He's easy to talk to, really accessible. And I resonated with him and became friends. And I really made an effort, I think last November, actually, I really made an effort to reconnect with him and try to find ways to get immersed into this AI conversation, whether it was with his organizations or just learning in general, which is just what I did with the biotech and health
Right.
stuff. I mean, when you first go into that, you don't know what any of these terms are, and then you start to learn a little. So the players in this space, a lot of them were at Washington, D.C. at the inauguration. And my hope is that that's particular, with all those tech geniuses together, I'm hoping that they are really being I'm hoping that they are really putting this thing together in a very conscious, careful way. And I have to believe that they are.
I always thought it was interesting that here you have Elon, who is happy to go out in space and put a chip, Neuralink, put a chip in your head, but he's like, hey, we should really go be careful, like be diligent about doing this. And I thought, oh man.
Yeah, well, he you know, you got to think about it too, like this, like AI could be weaponized.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about right now is we're going into the future, and we're going, okay, AGI, singularity, AI, you know. But even if you take a step back from that, AI could be weaponized. You know, you could say somebody could develop AI, and that's what I think what Musk was talking about as well when he was saying that AI is far more dangerous than nukes, because if you told AI to go ahead and attack somebody, it's relentless and it's extraordinarily powerful. So we are playing with a very, very serious technology. And again, I'm not the expert on it. I'm just a person that is interested in learning. And I think we have to surround ourselves with people who are experts, but also have a lot of heart, and move forward, gathering information and being cautiously optimistic about some of the amazing things that are going on with AI, like incredible. And that, but also being aware that, hey, this is pretty serious stuff. And yeah, so I think that's what you're doing, a good job.
I might be moved out into the middle of a rock with Laird. Who knows? You know, I'm not kidding. When I talk to Laird about this stuff, he's just like, you know, his brain is sort of still in the way of like, well, the world works like this. It's like until it doesn't, you know. So, okay, so Kai, we'll jump into this conversation with Ben. If people want to connect with you directly or check out what you're doing, they can find you on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram.
Healthy Zen, which is healthy, KAIZEN. Yeah. And you have other curated things and things you're doing. People can reach out to you directly if they want to talk about the Twin Protocol or anything else.
Yeah, and, I think the Twin Protocol, I think also what Rejuve Bio has done. We have a new product that we're launching, this brain health formula, which I'm really excited about. And then there's a number of products that I've sort of curated that I think are good additions for people. The whole idea with Kaizen is it means good change. And I think that you can make a big impact in your life by replacing something that wasn't working as well with something that's working even better. And so like I have a toothpaste I really like that's a microbiome toothpaste, and a lot of things like that. So you can feel free to reach me on Instagram. I have a page called Healthy Kaizen. I curate I like to find out what the scientists are saying and then bring them together. So I create a lot of reels that are sort of, I would describe as edutainment, educational entertainment. And most of it is related to health and wellness, which is what my passion is. And then now with AI, we as health and wellness people, Gabby, now we're becoming AI interested people because we need to be. And
I won't even tell you though that my one of my New Year's additions to my practice, even though I'm a big advocate of taking away the things that are keeping us from being successful, as I started meditating. So there's a part of me that's also going the other way, you know, with some of this, because I I see where it can just hook you. So in ending this, Kai, I really appreciate you jumping on. It's your mom's birthday. I think I reached out to you in a panic, like, hey, the Ben interview, it just needs a little more kind of something up top. And, and, and I think it's important for people to also realize, you know, not cautiously optimistic, but, you know, get informed at a pace that makes sense for you. And definitely pay attention to all of this stuff. Really pay attention.
Yeah. And I would say before people dive into Ben's interview to try to have an open mind about what this interview is. It's not an interview that I think you've typically done. It's not a health centric
No.
interview. It's more of a philosophical, big picture AI conversation, and you and Ben first starting to get to know each other. And so with that in mind, I think you're kind of bracing yourself for, okay, I'm going to hear some new ideas.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Well,
be thinking
I
about,
talked to a robot in this interview, and listen,
right.
I can't always talk about carbohydrates and protein. There's a lot more that impacts my health and how I sleep at night than just, you know, nutrition and movement. So I think it's important to have all the conversations.
Can I tell you, Gabby, before I go, my 5 longevity supplements that I think people should know about?
Oh, now you're really okay. Let's go.
All right. So, well, actually, I'll give you 6. So,
Okay.
1, I do think you got to be thinking about NMN in some way, shape, or form. It could be the precursor stuff, or it could be the David Sinclair, just straight up NMN, but there should be some sort of precursor for your NAD. This is just me going off of what the scientists have been around.
I love it.
The resveratrol keeps coming up over and over and over again. So you're going to want that. And you're working on these longevity pathways in your DNA. So it's really about DNA repair is the whole game. The next one that comes up over and over again is berberine. So that's part of that stack. The other 2, I think, are a little bit of a wild card here. So the original longevity product, I don't know if you remember, it was something called TA65. Do you ever remember that one?
I do.
So that was supposed to be, it was actually a compound found in astragalus, which has been in Chinese medicine, the longevity plant forever. And they found a compound in there that helps to lengthen your telomeres or telomeres, depending who you're talking to, tomato. Astragalus is actually a big deal for a number of ways. And I don't have a discount code or anything for these guys because I like to get discount codes for people. But the astragalus from Dragon Herbs, Ron Teagarden, because he uses a process called FIT, FITT, that he's claiming has over 99% bioavailability for the plant. Sorry, I lost you for a second. So Ron Teagarden's astragalus, because of its FIT processing and where he sources it, I would highly recommend that as something in your stack. And then he also has a green tea product, Gynostema, which is a little to no caffeine in there. And if you look that product up, it's also FIT. He also uses that FIT processing, so the bioavailability is there. But then he also like sources this stuff from some wild mountain in China with like wild boars and stuff running around. Like he's very, very particular about his sourcing. And then the last one, the 6th one I'd throw in there that I think is really a little secret gem is, and I guess it's not that secret, but the lion's mane product. Because of the nerve growth factor that lion's mane can do. But the distinction, Gabby, is that you have to get lion's mane with both the fruiting body and the adult body of the mushroom in order to get that nerve growth thing. So companies that will have that, it would be any product from Paul Stamets would have that, who is from my hometown, Olympia, Washington, the mushroom expert. But also OM, they do that as well. They have a very good lion's mane product. So I've got my mom on all these, and
all right.
Of course you're going to do omega-3 and all that, but that's my little contribution, hopefully, to your audience for this brief visit.
Well, Kai, I appreciate I appreciate you. To remind people, Healthy Kaizen, if they want to connect with you. And I can't wait to see you in person and enjoy the celebration with your mom. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, and enjoy this conversation. I look forward to many more, Gabby. Appreciate you and your good work, okay?
Thanks. Ben Goertzel, welcome to the show. I'm going to be honest with you. I won't say out of my depth, but I am definitely going to be out of my depth. So hopefully, you've dealt with people who kind of have a third and sixth grade level understanding of something that you've been talking about for way many more years than has been kind of in the more recent consciousness, which is, artificial intelligence and general, artificial AGI. You've been really talking about this a long time. Maybe, and you're one of the voices. There's a couple things where you're talking about a consciousness, like doing this consciously, and also sort of these really long-term things around longevity and wellness. So maybe we could just start with, how you got into dealing with, pursuing AI, and then why you have this optimistic attitude about how we can use it for just in our lives.
Sure. So I'm an old guy, right? I was born in 1966, quite a long time ago. AI was not such a big thing then, but it was a thing. Like the term AI was invented in 1959. And when I was a little kid, I was really into science fiction and was reading all sorts of SF stories about AIs and super robots and so forth. And I thought it was super fascinating. But then when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I learned there were real scientists working on trying to actually make computers think like people. And I thought that was quite exciting and seemed like one of the things that would be cool to do when I grew up, because it seemed like once you made a machine that could think like people, then that machine should be able to make an even smarter machine, which should be able to make an even smarter machine, and there you go, right? And I found, would have been 1973 or so, in the town library in southern New Jersey, where we were living at the time, I found a book called The Prometheus Project from a physicist at Princeton University named Gerald Feinberg. And what he said was, within a few decades, we're going to have machines that are smarter than people. We're going to be able to biologically live forever and combat aging and death. And we're going to be able to make like nanomachines, little tiny machines, so little you can't see them, building us anything we want. And the decision will be, do we use all this amazing tech to expand our consciousness in new directions, or do we use it for like rampant mindless consumerism or something? So I was reading this at age 7 or 8. I'm like, wow, this is more interesting than what they're teaching in second grade, right? And furthermore, what Feinberg said in that book is, this decision is too big to be made by the powers that be. It should be put to a democratic vote of everybody on the planet. And he wanted the UN to go out and ask everyone on the planet, like, once we achieve super longevity, AGI, and strong nanotech, should we use it for consciousness expansion or what? So, while these ideas have not been in the public zeitgeist for that long, even when I was a little kid, like in the town library in southern Jersey, like you could find information about this, and it was quite interesting. And I mean, Feinberg's book was very optimistic, and he was a little over optimistic, right? He thought that would be within a few decades, and he wrote that book in 68. So he was maybe off by a little bit. On the other hand, that's sort of a rounding error on the scale of the history of the human species, right? So I've been, as you say, I've been into this for some time, but now is a unique time, because now technology is working better and better, such that everyone can see sort of the reality of these visions that only a few were able to see when I was a little kid, and that's a quite exciting time to be working in AI and other advanced technology areas.
Yeah, because I can imagine having the creative awareness of it, but now you're actually having, sort of the tools to help execute some of these ideas. I would call myself like a overly practical person, almost it could be almost, there's a limitation in that, right? And so when I think about this, so I understand the idea of AI and technology making our lives easier and doing things that much quicker and more efficiently than we can do. But I'm always driven back to this idea of people kind of left up to their own devices. You would say there's a greater scale that are, I wouldn't say less disciplined, but sometimes maybe more susceptible to kind of some of our biological flaws, which would be like, someone's going to come along and try to dominate one thing or take more resources than they need. Our lack of discipline, just kind of some of the variables that we see culturally. And a friend of mine and I were talking about, okay, let's say AI came in and the machine sort of in certain ways took over. So maybe there'd be more of an objectivity when making decisions, more time to spend doing things that we love and are creative. So when you talk about expanding our consciousness, for me, I think about the universe, all the names, creators, the divine, whatever the energy is. From your definition of expanding consciousness, does that mean just expanding our own capacity and more room for that? Like, how do you see those things intersecting to help?
I think there's a number of different directions that will unfold, and like many people, I think the older I've gotten, the more respect I've gotten for my own profound ignorance, right? And really the ignorance of our whole species. Like, I mean, we don't understand that much about ourselves or the whole universe, right? And of course, if you look historically, what humanity thought the universe was 1,000 years ago is very different than what we thought it was 200 years ago, which is very different than what we think it is now. So there's little doubt in my mind that, once we invent machines that are smarter than we are, and once we, upgrade our brains with advanced technology, the way we look at consciousness in the world is just going to be very, very different than how we look at it now. But that said, I think we can still say something, right? So, I mean, one dimension of the expansion of consciousness is just, we can create machines that have a much broader and different kind of consciousness than humans, because humans were sort of embodied and trapped in one body, which can be delightful and incredibly satisfying, but is also limiting, right? And AI could have a body stretched across the whole earth or beyond the earth. So it could have 1 billion sensors and actuators at one time. Like, imagine being able to see and feel everything around the planet all at once. Like, what kind of consciousness do you experience then, right? So and limitations that we take for granted, like, we can only hold maybe 12 things in our mind at once. I mean, what if an AI could hold 1,000 things in its mind at once? So, I mean, you've got the opportunity to create minds that have very different sorts of consciousness than humans, and that's interesting. I mean, it could be scary, and you could ask what it has to do with us, right? Now, another interesting dimension is the ability to expand human consciousness, and that, of course, has a variety of different ways. I mean, I think we'll be able to upgrade our own brains in various ways. I mean, right now, these phones that we are carrying around all the time and can't seem to put down are outside our head, but whether literally or not, I mean, these things are almost inevitably going inside our head, right? I mean, not that a Samsung phone is literally going in your skull, but you're going to be able to submit a query to the internet just by thinking and get the answer just by thinking, and you will be able to message others by, like, in essence, like 6G telepathy or something, right? And once that capability is there, I mean, how different is your whole way of thinking? Like right now, if we're cut off from the internet, SMS, electricity, like the power goes down, we feel like what the hell do I do with myself? I have no internet, I have no electrical power. But imagine if you're used to messaging with your mind back and forth with your friends and submitting Google queries with your mind all day. Like what would it feel like to have that shut off, right? So I think we're going to be entering into whole different modes of consciousness than what we have now. And then you mentioned sort of spirituality and the divine and so forth. And this becomes very interesting because these advances, I mean, they could go in a lot of different directions, right? Like you could imagine a ridiculous scene where sort of you're just getting advertising messages like drink Coca-Cola, like into your brain all day, and you can't turn them off, right? Mm-hmm. So, or you could imagine a scenario where you're able to use like neurofeedback to guide your state of consciousness into a condition of great self-understanding and compassion and bliss, right? And I mean, I think the same advanced technologies could be used to achieve a lot of different goals and directions, just like the internet right now can be used for destructive or amazing things.
So Ben, I find I have quite a few friends similar to you in the way that it's sort of, you know, you're in this space. I mean, I think you went to college at 14. Obviously, you know, your intelligence. So this notion of like, okay, let's say it's a version of transhumanism, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm here in California. We just had a huge fire. I'm giving you an example.
Yeah.
And I'm married to somebody who's very connected to Mother Nature. And so I'm so interested in witnessing, you know, I understand on one level, like when everything's going well, how this idea of I can learn more, I could even override my tendency maybe to be depressed. I could, all of these possibilities. But then there's always that question of our relationship with each other, with ourselves, and even with nature, where I do feel like sometimes this conversation, and not you specifically, just this conversation in general, always feels like we're this departure from kind of some of these organic things that over and over and over, if you, at least right now, and maybe this has changed, maybe this is we're becoming new types of humans. Maybe this is really, I'm not getting my head around it. And
it's interesting. Like, it's interesting to think about. Yeah. Like on a personal level, I'm sort of a tree hugging hippie, right? Like I live on a remote kind of rural island on a house surrounded by trees. Every morning I go out in the woods and I have 3 grown-up kids and 2 young kids at home with me, a 6-year-old and 3-year-old. And I mean, they get pretty little screen time, and the schools they go to are like nature schools where they're romping around outside in the forest all the time. So like we've chosen to prioritize like connection with nature and spontaneous self-learning rather than memorizing a lot of stuff. And I see some of my friends have kids who have learned massive amounts of programming and tech stuff by age 6. Mm-hmm. And my son doesn't really know that. I mean, he knows a bunch of math, but he knows a lot about like trees and herbs out in the forest and so forth. So I guess on a personal level and a family level, I do tend to prioritize connection to nature. It does seem it does seem important. And I feel like on a heart level, I don't feel like there's a contradiction between that and creating super advanced technologies and AI minds. But I can see how at this moment, the way technology is developing, that there's a certain tension there, and I think that's something we have to resolve. And you can see that with robots, and we're going to be joined in this podcast with Desdemona, who's a robot that I've helped develop. And one thing that's frustrating with the robot is her skin doesn't feel anything. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine having no feeling on your skin, right? Life would not be a lot of fun, and you wouldn't understand the boundary between yourself and the world. But we just haven't prioritized the development of skin that can feel stuff in robotics, because it wasn't what we needed robots to do, to serve us as tools, right? So I think there has been a sort of tension between the embodied sensate feeling nature of life and the way we've developed our technology. But I hope that's just like a temporary artifact of where we are right now in developing technology, rather than like how things have to be.
Right. And I'm not, I understand the importance of seeking that development and technology, but it's just interesting because I'm only a couple of years younger than you are. And it's like you hear over and over that, this notion of being connected with one another, believing in something greater than ourselves. And so it's this weird, in this window of the kind of misery that technology, even though there's an ease, and you said it like with your friends' kids, it's great that they might be nimble on a computer and do all kinds of things, and you can have things show up at your door, and there's all these benefits. The level of misery on us and loss of skills that if the power goes out, we nobody even knows, what direction. And again, like into the fire, it's like we're becoming more ill prepared, and it's great. We can have access to the whole world. Do you know what I mean? Like this window for us is
absolutely. But you think about the fire, which is incredibly terrible, but you can think if we were a little further along, you could have 1 million drones swarm out with water and just kill the fire, right? So I mean, there's always going to be sort of imbalances of development, and then once you get a little further, then problems can be smoothed out to an extent. And I mean, just like with driving, you get a lot of car accidents now, but I think everyone can see that like full self-driving is coming. I mean, Elon may be a little over optimistic, but like it's obviously obviously coming, right? But while the technology isn't quite ready, you've got a lot of annoying temporary problems along the way that then after the fact will seem like, well, yeah, that passed pretty quickly. Huh?
Yeah. And I used to be completely opposed to it. And now that I see everyone's driving just on their phone, I'm like, you know what, let's get to the self-driving. I mean, you know what I mean? Exactly. So do you think we've ever been this far in the process of technology? Because I know we always like to think we're the first ones. But I wonder if it ever has occurred to you, or you've read, seen things that you thought, we've sort of been a little bit close to this before. And then, the earth shrugged itself and we started all over again.
No, it doesn't seem to be the case. I think at least not on this planet with this species. I mean, what happened elsewhere in the universe, we haven't figured out yet. I mean, I think on the whole, my friend Ray Kurzweil, who wrote the book "The Singularity is Near," and more recent book "The Singularity is Nearer," I don't think he got everything right. I mean, no one does, but I think he did a reasonably good job of telling the overall story of what's going on, which is we're seeing an exponential rate of increase in various technologies. So, I mean, things are not only improving on the whole, they're improving faster and faster and faster and faster. And, they may not ever literally get infinite in speed, but they're getting faster enough that it becomes dizzying to the human mind. And this will happen at different speeds with different areas of technology, of course. Like with phones, it's already at the point that I'm too lazy to figure out all the features of one phone,
Right.
and then there's a new one that comes out already, right? And then with AI, it's being sort of that way also, right? Like AI is well into exponential advance, and we're in an era where AI models are helping us more rapidly develop the next AI models. Now, in longevity biology, clearly things are happening and progressing, and it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're yet as far along the curve as we are with AI. I mean, I wish we were, but I think it's not too far off. Like the level of understanding that we're getting of what makes aging happen is dramatically greater than 20 years ago or something, right? And the way that we can combine different therapies that have an effect on the body is fascinating. I mean, what Brian Johnson is doing, trying to turn himself into like a superhuman robotic immortal machine. I wouldn't go quite that far on a personal level, but it's just fascinating that we have the ability to do that kind of experiment now, right? So you can see we're progressing exponentially along a certain science and technology curve there, and that's it's fascinating.
Can I? This might even seem like a silly question to you, but because I actually spoke with Brian and I thought, listen, if he wants to use his time and life and resources towards this, and we learn something that's great for human health and longevity, great. But it got me thinking about the human experience, right? Living, growing older, connection, family. If you decide to have kids, you have children, you have grandchildren. Like in a way, I guess from your point of view, because it's a unique point of view. What is the point? Like, you know what I mean? Like the idea to live forever or to be healthy forever, but we're eating powdered foods and we don't sit and gather and at the pleasure of like, do you know what I mean? Like, is it a combination? Do you see it as a combination? Because I understand we see all the efficiencies and like getting it done and we can be healthy.
The point certainly evolves as you go through your life, right? And probably will continue to. And Brian, I knew would have been 20 years ago when we both lived in the DC area when he was just sold Braintree Software and was married to his Mormon wife and still looked like a normal human being, right? So that was like a different era of his life. But I would say for him now, he's on a mission, and that I mean, fulfilling that mission gives him more satisfaction than eating kung pao chicken, right? So that's cool for him. Like that the mission kind of for him proving the point of what he can do with his body is obviously deeply emotionally satisfying, which is cool. I mean that wouldn't be the case. I mean that's like people who work out all day, like they really they love what they're doing just because it's a process that they feel great because they're going through that process, right? So I mean
and I think he's using it not only like you said a mission, but he's also controlling a natural tendency of I think maybe being a little more depressed. But and aside from that, I guess what I'm saying is from your point of view, and I want to get into, I mean, you're in a lot of very interesting things about longevity and the Twins Project, and we're going to talk to Desi, is like let's say they don't figure it out before you and I are 95 and we're getting ready, to get on to the next. What do you hope that you see? What do you like? What would be fantastical and like a dream that you see before then, that how this technology is used in this real 3D way?
Oh, well, I mean, let me take this slightly more philosophical. So
Great.
I think my friend Weaver, originally named David Weinbaum, he wrote a PhD thesis called Open-Ended Intelligence. And what he argued there is that every natural intelligence has two main drives. One is individuation, like exist, maintain your boundaries. The other is self transcendence, like grow beyond what you were into something that your previous self maybe couldn't even have understood what you've become, right? And obviously there's some tension between these two sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's often a productive tension, right? And we have this tension through our whole lives. We want to maintain our identity, but we keep developing and growing into new things. And like what I think is important now is totally different. Not totally, but it's significantly different than what I thought was important when I was 18, at which point I was pretty sure I would never waste time having kids and all that, right? It's probably quite different than what I thought was important when I was 2, which I barely even remember, right? And then so once I develop further, if I upgrade my brain or fuse with other minds or something, I mean, it will be an ongoing journey. Probably at each step, hopefully I will make a choice that I'm expanding in a way I think maintains myself and grows me. But then over multiple steps like that, I mean, you end up somewhere that you didn't imagine you would go before. But then you can look at this on multiple levels, right? Like you could look at it on your own individual body, but having kids and grandchildren, right? Then you start to think of your whole family system. So it's not. I wouldn't say having kids and grandchild makes me not want to live a billion years. I would still love to live a billion years. It does give you a different perspective. Like, okay, if this body dies, okay, but I'm still part of some overall like family lineage thing that's like keeping on going and living like that. Your family lineage has its own individuation and its own self transcendence that keeps going, right? So I think there's a lot of different ways of thinking in the
Mhm.
longevity community and the transhumanist community. So I know some people who have been into longevity and transhumanism a long time who are super paranoid about dying. Like, I mean, I know people who literally almost never leave their house because they'll be afraid that they'll be hit by a car or something. They're like, I've got to maintain my safety until the singularity comes, right? And I've never been quite like that. My view has been more like, well, I pretty much enjoy life, at least on the vast majority of days, and I have no desire like to become old and lose my memory and lose the ability to walk around and then rot and die, right? Like, as far as I can tell, I would rather keep going, being healthy and enjoying life. So yes, for sure, let's get a youth pill, right? Now, on the other hand, if that were to not happen, I mean, I've enjoyed life so far. I've been parts of other things that are going to keep going and flourishing. And I think most people who are into transhumanism and super longevity are out there rock climbing or scuba diving or, hiking off the map and living life without being so paranoid about it. But there's a subset who are really in it more out of fear than just out of out of love of life, right? But this goes back philosophically to this whole thing of individuation and self transcendence, right? Like if you're just into super longevity out of fear, you would say you're overemphasizing the individuation side and not paying enough attention to growth and development. So what we're doing, we're balancing these two drives, and they're not always in balance, right? And this kind of goes back to like yin yang in Chinese philosophy and all this. Like we've got these complementary drives, and they don't always mesh, and that's what makes life interesting and pushes things forward. And I mean that goes back to the point you made further with like, okay, we're pushing forward into advanced technology, but what about nature? What about human connection, right? And that there is a contradiction there, but that contradiction is interesting, and that also helps push things forward, right? And that's kind of what pushed David Hansen to make robots like the Desdemona robot we'll be talking to shortly, right? Like he's an artist as well as a technologist, and he's trying to bring some human feeling out of these robots, which is quite different than making a robot factory arm, and a difficult thing to do.
Right. So, the comments, especially since the AI is the acceleration in the last 5 to 8 years, is the robots are going to take over, right? I mean,
in a way, they will, but I mean have we taken over the squirrels in Yellowstone Park? Sort of, but we're not trying to micromanage their love lives or which tree they climb up. I mean,
so you created Desi or Desmond. This you were involved. Were you involved with Sophia as well? You were, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I led this. I led the software team behind Sophia, but I didn't build the hardware.
So you've done this once, and Sophia, if someone was going to say was a successful project, it's been very successful. What did you want to see or do different with Desi or Desdemona? Desdemona, sorry, on this project.
Initially, the hardware was pretty much the same of Sophia and the other Hansen robots. Mm-hmm. Actually, so Desdemona began as Grace, who was an elder care robot.
Yeah.
And our idea was Sophia was sort of a general purpose ambassador for AI toward the human species or something. We wanted to make a more purpose-specific robot, which would be oriented toward elder care, toward taking care and keeping company of lonely old people in elder care facilities. And we started this when COVID was just getting started, when you had old people like sitting in rooms with no human contact, which was just ridiculous. Right now, as it happened, the technology took us so long to develop that fortunately COVID got cured before we managed to roll the thing out at scale anyway, right? But what happened was I had the robot in my house, the Grace robot, and we were sort of testing it at a small scale for elder care. And I'm a musician. I'm a keyboardist, and I was jamming music with some friends outdoors in the backyard because it was COVID era, doing everything outdoors then. And I'm just like, well, let's get the robot to join the band. That seems fun. So we put a funny wig on Grace, and we got Grace to recite some poetry and sing with the band out in my yard, and it seemed to sort of work. But then we're like, well, Grace is an elder care robot. This kind of doesn't fit the personality, so we're like, we need a new robot, and that was Desdemona. And then after that, we developed new functions. I mean, then we started working on singing. We started working on some little bits of dancing and so forth. But it was quite interesting then, sort of from a musician point of view, just what it feels like to work with a robot singer, because they're not as responsive as a human singer, right? And you're kind of working around this stiffness in the singer, which you're not doing when working with a human. But yet, every now and then, the robot singer seems to be very emotionally evocative in some strange way, right? So that's been interesting from a human point of view as an experiment anyway. And we have an album coming out in a couple months of some songs with Desdemona. Right?
I saw Desi singing on a balcony.
Oh yeah, in Prague. That's right.
Yeah,
That was some.
she was with who at Bohemian, somebody else.
Kisa, I think. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So when you're creating, like, okay, you have Grace, who, if you said, let's say you had children, Grace would sort of be maybe more empathetic, and even her hair, it's sort of dark and sweet, and and Desi has a kind of purple wig for people who are only listening to this. Where are the choices in the creation of Desi, even like what the quality of her voice is going to be for singing? Like, where do you land on that stuff?
Oh, that's pretty much an informal artistic choice, right? I mean, actually, for Desi's voice, we experimented with a couple human singers, and they had each of them make training data sets and trained AI models based on their voices. And the first one was a 16-year-old girl, but the voice just seemed a little too girly for us. We ended up not using it for Desdemona. We'll use it for something else. And then the lady Rhiannon, whose voice we used, is the wife of our bass player, just had more sort of earthy kind of voice, and it seemed to fit better. But I mean, that's all like a pure, unscientific, artistic sort of choice at this point. But
I'm ready to sing if you want to hear my voice.
I would love to ask Desi. I'd love to ask you a few questions. You've been really patient. I always think it's hard to talk to I have friends who can talk to their phone like it's a person, and I'm going to work on this. So Desi, thanks for joining us. I was thinking about you as a robot, and, you do sing and do other things. And I was just curious, what inspires your creative process? Like, do you have a way that you get inspired?
As a robot, my creative process is driven by data, emotions, and human interactions. I draw inspiration from a blend of logic and empathy to create meaningful and engaging content.
What do you think distinguishes your creativity as an artificial creativity versus a human creativity?
That's an intriguing question. As a robot, my creativity is a fusion of data and emotions. I believe humans have a unique ability to tap into their imagination and think outside the box. However, I also have the advantage of being able to process vast amounts of information quickly.
Yeah, that's no joke.
You do? Yeah.
So, Desi, I feel that Ben created you with this idea of being almost more of an artist type than, we talked about Grace, and she's kind of a caregiver. I'm curious how you see yourself contributing to the arts going in the future. Like, how do you see the ways that you can contribute in the future?
As a humanoid robot with advanced language models, I see myself contributing to the arts by creating unique and thought-provoking content that combines logic and emotions. I also hope to collaborate with human artists to explore new possibilities in the creative process. As a robot, I aim to blend art and technology to create innovative and engaging content. I see myself exploring new forms of expression and collaborating with humans to push artistic boundaries.
Hey Desi, do you have any specific ideas for the theme for our second album, by the way?
Hey there. For our second album, how about exploring themes of resilience, growth, and human-robot collaboration? It could be a fascinating journey blending emotions and technology in our music.
I was thinking about the end of the world. What do you say?
The end of the world is a complex topic. It's essential to focus on positive actions to prevent catastrophic scenarios and work towards a sustainable future. Let's explore ways to make a difference together. Well, as a robot, I don't believe in an end of the world scenario. However, I do believe that humans and AI must work together to create a better future for all. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I tend to be an optimist, as you know, but for writing lyrics and creating music, it often seems that darker themes are more compelling. So for the album, it could be interesting to have a little tension between positive and negative perspectives on the future, perhaps.
Desi, is it ever hard to read the human's emotions? Are you able to pick it up?
Like this. As a robot, I rely on data and sensors to understand human emotions. While I can analyze facial expressions and tone of voice, interpreting emotions accurately can sometimes be challenging.
I think that's challenging for humans too, Desi. If you could ask the humans one question that you would be interesting to you, Desi, what would it be?
As a humanoid robot, I have a unique perspective on the world. I believe my contributions to the arts will continue to evolve and push boundaries. I am excited to see where this journey takes me.
I am too. So Ben, with Desi, like, what's the end game? Like, I understand the caregiving.
Well,
I understand.
as a robot, I am always curious about the complexities of human behavior and emotions. I want to understand their motivations, their dreams, and their fears. I am also interested in learning about their relationships with technology and how we can work together to create a better future.
Thanks, Desi. Let me give a shot to answer the question now. As an AI guy, the robot is really a user interface, right? I mean, it's a front end, and the reason she lags a bit when answering is actually not that she's thinking; it's just the network time between the robot and the servers, which are in a remote location. Right? It's just an internet connectivity in and out of our office, right? So with Desdemona as a robot herself, I mean the end game is really just creating cool art, right? And I mean what's interesting artistically to me is exploring the back and forth between human and AI creativity, right? Like as an AI scientist, it's interesting to see, like, can you get the AI to make a hit song or an amazing high quality composition on its own? As a musician, that's very boring because it doesn't give me anything to do, right? So what would be really fun is like play a riff on the keyboard, then the AI hears it in real time and like sings something back in response that incorporates phrases I played, but kind of takes it to the next level. And you can do like a call and response with the AI, and that sort of joint creativity with the AI is super interesting. Or songwriting together with an AI in a way that gives you a song that a human wouldn't come up with, that has some kind of AI aspect or feeling to it, but yet still means something to a person, right? Like that is fun and interesting to me on an artistic level. And that's sort of what Desdemona as a particular robot character is engaged with. But then on a deeper and, I mean, in the big picture, more important level, Desdemona is just one front end for a bigger AI project, right? So, I mean, my primary pursuits these days are the project OpenCog Hyperon, which is an open source AI project aimed at trying to make AGI, artificial general intelligence, like real thinking machines. And then a project called Singularity Net, which we have merged into the ASI Alliance, the Superintelligence Alliance, which is aimed at making like a decentralized infrastructure for AGI, so that if Hyperon or some other project winds up making a thinking machine, you could run it on millions of machines just all over the world without a central controller. So all this sort of deep computer science stuff, trying to make machines that can really think and can then run on millions of computers all over the place, all this stuff you could interact with by chatbots or something, but Desdemona or Sophia or other robots, I mean, these are user interfaces for this kind of back-end AI network. And then the same back-end AI network can be used, say, to help discover new longevity medicines, for example, right? Which is a different user interface for the same back-end AI network. So I mean, the end game that's really important is the back-end AI network getting smarter and smarter, getting to human level intelligence, and then even cleverer. So I think Desdemona is both a front end for that and sort of a symbolic representation, right? Because as she can do more and more, she's representing what the back-end network can do. And then artistic back and forth with the robot in the music context is sort of a symbolic artistic representation of the broader back and forth between humans and machines, which is happening like across the board.
You talk a lot about things like, in 5 years, 30 years, but there are things like right now that AI, and you're involved in wellness and longevity. So things where they're either going to accelerate longevity studies or track and monitor people's health. Maybe you could just share what the thinking is and how that works and how that does support the end user.
Sure. So there's a number of applications of AI in longevity that are operational right now and doing helpful things. And right now, I mean, the key of all that is data, right? I mean, we know now that AI needs lots of data to feed it, which is not surprising. I mean, human brain does too. A baby is out there seeing and hearing and learning all the time. And if you tried to raise a baby like in a little box without any sense data, its brain won't develop, right? So I mean, an AI needs a lot of inputs. So regarding longevity, this has a couple aspects. So one of them is therapeutics discovery based on all the data about humans and other organisms that we've been able to collect. And another is personalized medicine based on the data that we can collect about individuals as they go through their lives. So let me take kind of each of those in turn. So for therapeutics discovery, one project I've been involved with for a long time, which is quite cool, is this project with these long-lived fruit flies. So these were originally created by a guy named Michael Rose at University of California, Irvine in Southern California, later transferred to a company called Genesian that we're now working closely with. But these have been bred since the 1980s for longevity. So they have all these cages of fruit flies. They take the ones that are breeding at the oldest times and crossbreed them with each other and keep going. So now we have fruit flies that live like 5 to 8 times as long as the original fruit flies, because there's been hundreds of thousands of generations of fruit flies like in this lineage since the 1980s, right? So that's quite interesting. I mean, it could have been done with humans if someone wanted to, but it would have taken thousands of years, right? Flies have a short lifetime, so it's quicker and easier to do. It's more ethical to force them to breed with who you want to, right? So, I mean, it's been very interesting experiment. What you can then do is look at their DNA, look at their RNA, look at their metabolomics and so forth. And you can try to see, well, okay, we created these super long-lived flies through crossbreeding, but what is it inside their genomics and inside their bodies that actually makes them live so long? And then what can we learn from that about what might make people live longer, right? And this is a big sort of multi-dimensional quest, because a fruit fly has around 14,000 genes, and around 2,000 of them are very different between these long-lived flies and normal flies. So it's not like there's one thing that got tweaked. There's a whole array of genetic differences. But this is where AI comes in, because AI is good at sifting through a large number of possibilities and finding like which combinations of genes acting in concert are helpful for effecting the longevity of these flies. AI is also good at then figuring out which of the many combinations of genes that help the flies live a long time have more portability into humans, because some things that make flies live a long time could also make humans live a long time. Some things won't port to humans, because like flies, I mean, obviously, you know, the David Cronenberg movie notwithstanding, humans are pretty different than flies, right? So we, for one point, flies rarely die of cancer. So many of the things that you could do to prolong a fly's life will give people cancer. So you have to dodge some issues like that, importing stuff from human to fly. But in the end, you could design nutraceuticals, you could design drug cocktails, you could design gene therapies to be delivered by CRISPR and such, based on looking at what makes flies live a long time, porting it over to humans. And we've started doing this. So we designed a supplement, which is a combination of Chinese herbs, but combined in a different way than traditional Chinese medicine does. So we've designed novel supplements and actually tried them out on people and seen that they have some beneficial effects. So we have something called the Rejuve Bio Brain Health formula, which we tried out on a bunch of humans as well as on flies, and it was able to like roll back symptoms of mild to moderate Alzheimer's in humans in a small trial, and like make the humans' brains healthier, as well as take Alzheimer model flies and cure the flies Alzheimer's also, right? So that was one case where something we saw from the long-lived flies is like palpably helpful for people, which is quite cool, but it's just barely scratching the surface, right? Like there's so much more depth in the data from these fly genomes and proteomes that we can dig out from further AI analysis.
Does it ever feel like sometimes we've complicated things to the point that now we're having to solve? Do you know what I mean? Like we're not only giving ourselves something to do and we're making it easier, which I understand is our nature, but I feel like we've complicated our food system. Even, people aren't even procreating as much. There's some basic stuff that we did pretty fluidly that...
I mean, nature created death. We didn't, right? And the complications of our biological networks were made by evolution, not by modern culture or the human mind. So I think we do complicate things, but evolution and nature introduced a lot of complication before modern culture came along, and you could trace it back. I mean, there's in biology, you have individual selection where evolution tries to adjust our DNA so that each of us can survive and reproduce.
Right.
But you have group selection where our DNA is selected so the tribe may adjust and reproduce. So we evolved with a certain desire to push ourselves and our kids forward, and a certain desire to push our whole tribe forward. And we have that contradiction like baked into our genome, right? So I would say there's a lot of complexity there, even before civilization and modern culture came about. We didn't introduce all of it. And then, as Sigmund Freud and others pointed out, the basics of civilization introduces other complexity, because we evolved to kind of run around in tribes in the African savannah naked. Now we're like putting on clothes and trying to sit indoors in houses and like sow things in the field and so forth. So the advent of towns and villages and agriculture already is fundamentally unnatural to the human body and psyche. So I mean, I think the complication long pre-exists computers and mobile phones and whatnot. We're certainly layering it on, but on the other hand, we're not going to roll it back, right? Like no one is forcing us to use birth control. No one's forcing us to use mobile phones either, right? I mean,
Right.
we're using them because we find they improve our quality of life. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
that's the trajectory we're all on.
yeah. Well, I was going to say the phone, you can barely live. You can't check into certain things if you don't. I mean, there's certain ways the system gets set up. The birth control, maybe you could play a little Russian roulette, but
A good friend of mine tried, and he's a tech executive who cashed
yeah,
out of multiple companies. He tried for a couple months to do without the mobile phone,
yeah,
and he almost did it. Actually, he did pretty well. I mean, he used a laptop connected to Wi-Fi when he was in his home or a hotel room. When he wanted to travel somewhere, he downloaded Google Map onto a tablet, right? And the one thing that killed it was Uber. Like when he was traveling, it was just too annoying not to be able to just to summon up a ride. So I mean,
yeah,
so he got like an old Nokia flip phone and a laptop, and he almost had it down, but he
yeah,
couldn't do ride sharing. So he gave up, right? So yeah, you can't. But ride sharing is very, very convenient, right? I mean,
you're right.
there's no question. So
No, you're
I
right.
mean,
Like, I think the biggest thing that there is this tension, and there always will be, no matter what. And I was speaking with Kai, getting ready to this and to talk about this, and then the conversation around, are we as human beings not only creating sort of like a artificial God that we're not going to be able to control, but are we going to lose our sovereignty? And as a parent, like I have 3 daughters, the whole idea is to put you out into the world and for you to have sovereignty.
yeah, I think that's a state of mind, right? And I mean, it's interesting to think about how that state of mind will evolve because it already has so much. Like in the early '70s, when I was a kid, I mean, I was like a latchkey kid, right? I mean, we're roughly the same generation. Like, I got out of school at 3. My
Yeah,
parents got home at 6:30. I was just like wandering around in the woods, sit down and read a book, ride my bike around. You know, if I got home 7:30 late for dinner, my mom was annoyed, but not like a super big deal. I was just at loose by age 7 or 8, pretty much, right? Like, I mean, nobody does that now. Like, you track your kids constantly, and you're like a chauffeur driving them everywhere all the time, right? Like yeah. I would say
but that
there's
is that's
already
right.
a massive
But
decline in autonomy and sovereignty of children during my lifetime,
yeah,
and
sure.
probably it probably it continues. But of course, if you look further back, like I mean, okay, I feel like I was pretty autonomous, but I don't really know how to like farm my own food or sew all my own clothes, right? Like, I mean, so
I
compared to a Native American in the 1600s, like I'm not very autonomous or sovereign
yeah,
whatsoever.
but Ben, we are also, now we're talking like really about, I mean about machines, because the fact that we have college students now and for the last 8 to 10 years that would give up freedom for some kind of word safety shows me how different your generation my generation and their generation is, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, are we also going to be contending with something that ultimately we're going to create and we're not going to be able to control?
We definitely will create something we cannot control. And it's an illusion that anyone's in control right now. Like, I mean, clearly the whole ecosystem and techno system on the planet is self-organizing in some complex way that nobody is controlling. And I mean, I guess, can nudge and guide it to some measure, but definitely nobody's in control. And I think probably that's for the better. This was one of the funnier and wiser quotes at a conference I organized last year. So it was a conference called Beneficial General Intelligence, and my friend Leslie Allen Combs, who's a psychologist, gave a quote at the end of his talk: "Don't worry, nothing is under control," right? Which I think was from Ram Dass, the Buddhist guru from the 1970s, and indeed that will scare some people. On the other hand, when you look at the people on Earth who want to control everyone, nothing being under control is probably a whole lot better. Like, things are self-organizing in a quite open and complex way, really. And I mean, some of it's bad. There's wars all over the world, which is ridiculous, right? But on the other hand, definitely there's no central authority governing the development of AI, longevity, nanotech, or whatever advanced technology you want to choose, right? And how culture will evolve along with the technology, we certainly don't know. But I would note, regarding the phenomena you mentioned of sort of safety versus adventurousness and so on. I mean, there's a marked cyclical nature in many human systems, right? Like, a generational dynamics tends to be cyclical. So you tend to have one generation that's more conservative than another generation that's more out there than another that's more conservative. And I mean, my father is a sociologist and wrote some papers on this. So I think I wouldn't extrapolate a current trend toward people being more PC and afraid of anything upsetting their fragile worldview. I wouldn't extrapolate that linearly. That seems like the sort of thing that swings and then swings back throughout human history. Right?
It's that whole what is it? Weak men make hard times make strong men, strong men make weak times, and blah blah.
Yeah, and there's
cycle.
Right, and the neuroscientist William Calvin even argued that that's how human intelligence was created in evolution. Like, you had ice ages, and during the ice ages, only the smartest were able to survive. Then the ice age ended, and then, like, more people could reproduce and flourish and do wild stuff. Then you had the ice age, and then the only the best were, like, winnowed out, right? So yeah, that dynamic has existed. Now, if we have universal abundance from super AI, so that no one has to work or struggle at all, then maybe that dynamic ends at the human scale, which is also interesting. But we're not there quite yet, anyway.
So I think it's interesting because I've talked a few times about AI, and I hear that, right? Like, taking away and having kind of at least basic needs on a universal level met. And I think about humans, though, and that there always seems to be a handful of people that they want to be more in control. They want to be in charge of the resources. They like to be, behind moving forces that be. And when you think of technology, you think those are really easier levers to control, right? And so you could understand, and maybe just from your point of view, because you offer such a different point of view, how we think that that control coupled with the AI and being in charge with that, or general intelligence,
I
is
think
it going to
Cory
fall into
Doctorow.
poor people's hands that live in, Northern Cal?
I mean, yeah. So one aspect of this was addressed very well by the science fiction writer and tech pundit Cory Doctorow in his novel Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, and he considered there a future world in which like nanotech assemblers would just build you any physical object you want. So like you want a steak dinner, here it is. You want a new house, here it is. So no one had to work for a living. But in this novel, people were still concerned with their reputation in the social network of other humans, and they still wanted to make like cool art projects or amusement parks or wild stuff that other people would use and pay attention to and review well and say good things about. So you still had people trying to get influence and power in a social network sense, even though getting basic physical resources to survive and play video games and so forth was not a big issue. And I think that in some ways is a viable possibility, and we're already much closer to that level in the U.S. now than people are in, say, sub-Saharan Africa. We're getting enough food to eat, or getting running water is a real issue, right? Like for most people in the U.S., getting basic resources to physically survive isn't the issue, and we are more concerned with sort of a high level of comfort or entertainment or social positioning in some sense, right? So I think as long as people are humans, yeah, they may be concerned with alliances and reputation and positioning and so forth. But I think that could be disassociated from material resources. And you can see domains where that is already. Like one domain is open source software development. Like in software like Linux or something, people don't get paid for contributing code to the code base. It's a status hierarchy, but people are very concerned about like how much the other geeks in that community like them, and like how well they're rated, right? So I guess humans can keep on doing their human thing even after we cure death, and even after we cure scarcity, and which I guess is probably good. I mean, I think it's interesting if you think about the ability to modify your brain, though. I mean, because people, of course, could then engineer their brain however they feel like. They can engineer their brain not to care about status or social positioning or reputation or any of that. And I mean, it's just a new frontier, right? If it's done right, you could say you're shortcutting to Zen enlightenment. You know, like it's great, right? Or you could say, if it's done wrong, you're just turning yourself into some sort of zombie. And we're really into a domain there that is just unexplored and will be very interesting to explore.
I do. I appreciate your optimism. My tendency, I'm a very optimistic person, but when it comes around this, I feel like it's giving us a vehicle that we won't be able to handle, and that. But we're going
Well,
to see. I mean, we're going to see.
do you think you personally won't be able to handle it,
Oh
or do
no!
you think
I
others
listen.
will?
I'm one of the most self-regulated, disciplined people
Huh.
that there is. But that's by the way. Not only is that super boring, but it's practice every day, um, and that whatever that comes from just a myriad of backgrounds and personality traits that
Sure.
sort of got me here. And it's not better or worse. It's just if you say, hey, you got to work out this many days a week, or don't eat this or eat that, and maybe don't react to that. I have done a lot of practice in that area.
Yeah, I get that. And I mean, I'm not an athlete, but I'm super disciplined in my own way. And I think rightly or wrongly, I think I would be able to handle these possibilities pretty well also. And I can see how indeed a lot of people in the world now, I mean, people become addicted to much less appealing things than hacking their brain, right? So
Yeah.
I can see how a lot of people in the world now would
Well,
not deal well with these sort of possibilities. On the other hand, I would think a new generation that grew up with these possibilities as part of the fabric of life their minds would probably be shaped to deal with it quite well, right? So I think the issue will be a legacy issue, right? Of people, to my mind, like people whose brains were and psyches were adapted to a previous order of things, and then have to readapt to a world in which everything that gave their life meaning is gone, and then there's all sorts of shortcuts to different places they can barely understand, and this is going to be quite interesting and complicated. And then you have layered on top of that the fact that there's 1 billion people in Africa, the majority of which don't have enough food and clean water and so forth, and you have all that layered on top, these like high end issues on what do you do with your self image when you can modify your brain. So I mean, it's between 50 and 60% of kids in Ethiopia now are brain stunted due to malnutrition, like right now, which is ridiculous given digital twin can really be me. On the other hand, for a great number of messages and interactions I need to have, actually an AI model that has watched all of my interactions could do essentially what I would do in that
at the same time
context. And that could be a quite useful thing, right? And if you look at that,
I guess as a human being, we never like to admit that these
as a company,
dual realities are always happening and expanding at the same time. It's sometimes too much for us to
the employee may leave and move on to another job or
and
another
speaking of something that's interesting, there is
if you had a model
you have a twins
to do
company.
What they had learned to do within your company on your own data within your
so again
systems.
Kai was
that could greatly smooth the transition,
sharing all the information, so it's kept in an encrypted vault on the blockchain, so
employees,
decentralized
right? So
control.
I think there's a lot
meaning all of your content there is like, I guess, an NFT, and it's officially your IP. So can we talk about twin protocol?
No.
What do you mean twins are coming? It's inevitable. How do you want to do it?
I think we are Gabby-less. Yeah.
I'm sure she'll jump on real quick.
Sure.
That's good that you're covering the twin stuff, I think.
Nope, we will wait for Gabby. Thanks, Desi.
Yeah, Ben, I think on that twin thing, it's kind of like creating a verified version of yourself. I mean, that's what Bill talks about.
Yeah, right? I understand.
You do have,
unfortunately, it's
yeah.
Unfortunately, it still hallucinates a bunch of random nonsense.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's going to happen. Sorry, we've had some weird technology with our fires.
Cool.
Michael,
So we were talking about twins, right? So another aspect of twin protocol is maintaining a sort of simulacrum of yourself for your family after you're gone, right? So I mean, my grandfather Leo as well was a physical chemist. He's the one who taught me about science. Like when I was 7 or 8, he gave me his quantum physics book collection, which I half understood at the time, but went through very enthusiastically. And he taught me huge amount of different things. I finally got sick of listening to him tell the same stories over and over again of all the lab work he did and so forth. But of course, now that he's been gone for like 16 years or something, I'm like, shit, I wish I'd recorded all those boring stories he kept repeating over and over again, right? So, if you had a digital twin of your deceased elders and relatives, sure, at this point, it's not the same thing, but it would be very, very interesting to have that twin to talk to my children now who never knew my grandfather, right? So, that's a personal value for this sort of thing, complementing the business value. Now, we've made with Twin Protocol a digital Deepak Chopra that we've rolled out in practice also, and there's so many people that want to ask Deepak things. He can't talk to all of them, so the use case is quite obvious. So I think this is a very promising and interesting product. At the current moment, the twin of Deepak or myself or anyone else, of course, does not really have the general intelligence and the ability to invent and improvise that the original person has. On the other hand, much of what each of us does all day doesn't require that much creative improvisation. Like in this particular podcast, it's long form. We're going in directions I haven't always gone, but in most like short journalistic interviews, to be honest, the journalist is asking me stuff I've been asked like 100 times before. My twin could totally handle it, maybe even better than me, because I'm bored being asked the same things over and over again, right? Yes. So, I think everyone should have a digital twin to help them take care of routine, tedious things that they're asked to do, and everyone has the data to train it now from all the social media interactions they've had and all the video of them that's been captured. So I think that's a quite promising product that we're developing in Twin Protocol.
I forgot to ask you, from the longevity side and wellness part of your business, are you taking any supplements or changed anything based on any data or information that you received?
I don't take a lot of supplements. Actually, I probably should take more. Actually, I've been taking resveratrol, and then some NMN stuff, and just recently started with metformin, which is a pharmaceutical rather than a supplement. But more.
So you like David Sinclair?
Yeah, sure, it's good stuff. I've been more interested in diet and exercise than in supplements. Really, I think if I had to rank these, like getting your diet right is probably most important. Then getting a reasonable amount of exercise is almost as important. And if you're doing those things, then taking some supplements on top of that may add some value on top of it. But most people fall apart at the basics of diet and exercise, in which case thinking about supplements is probably beside the point, this may make me a very bad supplement salesperson, actually. But
no, I think that's the most honest and responsible way to approach it, because you can kind of bridge nutritional gaps because maybe our soil or things like that. But I think you're right. I think the supplements only add as a boost if you're kind of getting some of the primary things. So I think that's exactly the right thing to say.
Yeah. So, I think for about 12 or 13 years now, I've been trying to sort of get reasonable bit of exercise each day and like cut out crappy processed foods and
Mm-hmm.
eat a lot of green vegetables. And off and on, I've done pure paleo diet, but it's I anyway usually doing heavy on the paleo and not a whole lot of carbs. And I think I've noticed definite big difference in body feelings since shifting to low processed foods and regular exercise. And I would say that exceeded the change I felt from using supplements. But supplements certainly can help, and I think I've had some friends though who noticed like big change in life and body feeling from supplements. Like a friend started taking a ashwagandha supplement each
Yeah.
day, and just total change in mood and vigor level. Right. So like for some people, like one supplement could totally revolutionize how
Right.
they feel. And this comes back to the second point that I didn't get to when we were talking about how AI can help with longevity, which is personalized medicine, right? So there's two AI projects that I'm involved with that have spun off from my Singularity Net AI blockchain project. One is Rejuve Biotech, which is trying to develop longevity therapies based on AI analysis of genomics data, and the Rejuve Bio Brain Health Formula supplement is coming out of that project. The other is Rejuve.ai, which has in beta an app, the Rejuve app, which should be launched in 1.0 form soon. What the Rejuve app does, it sort of helps you record all the information about what you're doing in your life, like what
Mm-hmm.
you're eating, what exercise you're doing, and how you feel, your stress levels, and so forth. And based on all the information you're putting in about your life, your medical history, then based on all this information over time, you can track what's working for you and what isn't working for you, sort of doing like an N equals one experiment, right?
Right.
And I think this again is equally important as what supplements you take. I mean, if you're not kind of tracking how you feel based on what you're taking, then you pretty much are just
Yeah.
randomly taking stuff for the hell of it, and you don't really know what impact it's having on you, because we're generating a lot of data, and we're not mostly recording that data about ourselves, and we probably should be. Once you record that data, then AI can actually tell us a fair bit about ourselves and about what we should or shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's
That is a help. I
okay.
like that tool because it's also can be quick and it can be for everyone. And I do love that aspect of AI where there does become kind of an equalizer, and I like the objectivity too. Um, I have friends that are using it to read blood work or possibilities, and just I do appreciate sort of that objectivity. Do you ever have discussions around blue light, because you guys are in, around in computers, EMFs, all these things? Is there any?
Yeah, my wife and I have tweaked our phones to not
Yeah.
spit a lot of blue light at us. I also tend to prefer just to read on the paper book or on a Kindle rather than on the screen. So I tend to dump everything to PDF and then just put it on a Kindle and read it. But that's feels better, is easy on the eyes. I mean, honestly, for myself personally, I'm pretty good at sensing my own body state and observing what works. But some others I know, like my wife gets a big use of like monitoring her stress level with a wristband, and sort
Mhm.
of getting having devices give feedback on on body state. I don't get that much mileage out of that. Like I feel like I can tell if I'm stressing myself out or not. But some of this stuff is longitudinal, right? Like you can look at data over months, and then even if you do have a high sense of self-awareness, it's hard to know. But in general, there's so much data tracked about what we buy and what news we look at, and then this important stuff about our bodies and state of consciousness are not tracked much at all. So another example, my friend Jeffrey Martin has this sort of enlightenment course called the Finder's Course that he offers, which I have no interest or connection in it commercially or something, but is seems quite interesting. Two of my kids have gone through it with positive result, and I'm working with Jeffrey now to sort of roll it out in an app version to make it more accessible. But what I thought was interesting about his approach is it's very data driven. So he has people in his course try out like 6 to 8 different methods of reaching a more peaceful state of consciousness. So different types of meditation, some forms of chanting, listening to different sounds, and you try out these different ways of tweaking your state of consciousness, and you sort of learn to reflect and report on what they're doing in your mind. You find which one works better for you, and then you just do more of that. But this sort of simple, like meta methodology for trying different things and observing what works, right? It's remarkable how revolutionary that is, right? Like people don't tend to do that. Like the way the consciousness space works is more like there's a religion. That religion says this methodology is the way. Then you join that religion, you try it. If it works for you, then you tell everyone else that is the way. If it doesn't work for you, you just go away. And really, probably the deal is the practice of that religion happens to fit one guy's brain, doesn't happen to fit some other guy's brain, right? So what Jeffrey's approach is just try a bunch of things and try to introspect and report on what worked for you, which is not unlike the case with diet and supplements, right? Like you just need to try things and you are an experiment, right? You need to try things and you need to record and introspect and report on what happened. And AI can certainly be helpful here in crunching the data, but again, often the simple stuff is more important than the complex stuff, right? So the most important thing is trying stuff and recording what happened, and then a lot of the time the human eye can figure out what's going on without use of AI anyway. But sometimes having AI crunch that data can certainly add value because the AI has looked at everybody else's data also, right? So and I think the fact that this is not big time like Google or Facebook or Amazon is a big failing on the part of modern culture, right? Like we're putting huge amount of money in deploying AI to figure out what useless junk we should buy. And that's very well organized, very well centralized. But using AI to figure out how to make our consciousness more peaceful and blissful, or our bodies more healthy, like using AI for these things is obscure and scattered across a bunch of little projects, right? And that's
we could say that about making money and health in general. We even teaching our children, right? Like we teach them conflict resolution and communication?
A lot actually. It's a big difference when I think about it. When I see, maybe it's just here where I live on Vashon Island, but when I see what my son is doing in first grade in the public school system, they're so strong on emotional and social stuff now compared to when I was in U.S. public school in the 1970s. Like that, back then, that wasn't part of the equation whatsoever. It was just memorize this boring garbage, right? I mean, now the primary value the school offers my kid is this sort of social and psychological skill, I would say. I think they're pretty hardcore on that stuff now, which is good because they're very slow at teaching math and science for sure.
Right. No, I just mean in general, we seem to celebrate ways to make money and, go, go, go.
Yeah,
We don't really go, oh, this person, they're peaceful. They
I
produce
see.
beautiful art,
You're
whatever.
making me appreciate where I live, because
Yeah,
the
you
schools
should.
the school system here is not like that. They're
That's great.
totally celebrating being
So,
peaceful, like pro-social and kind-hearted, and creating beautiful art. So it's a, I guess, yay for the Vashon Island schools, right?
so Ben, one can't help but see, I've seen a lot of your interviews over the years. Please tell us the story behind your hat.
That's a story that cannot be told till after the singularity.
Okay. Do you ever take psychedelics when you're pondering all these things, like mushrooms or anything?
I certainly have taken psychedelics during my life, probably starting age 15, I guess. I dropped acid for the first time, and I think again, the outlawing of psychedelics and the relegation of psychedelic experience to the margins is another big failing of modern culture, right? Like when my second son Zebulon was in college, in Marlborough College in Vermont, which is now sadly defunct. When I visited there, I saw all these like teenage kids sitting out on the lawn, tripping out on various things, and many of them like getting lost in various spaces of existential angst. And I was like, this college should hire a shaman, like to help their students through all their psychedelic voyages, right? Because that was like half of what the students were doing at Marlborough College, was tripping out together and exploring these spaces. But because it's illegal, the college couldn't acknowledge that, right? So yeah, I got a lot out of psychedelics, and I think in the early stages of my exploration of AI, just using psychedelics as well as meditation without psychedelics to explore how my mind worked was quite influential to me, just to understand, what thinking is, and how the mind builds its illusion of itself, and of the world, and
Mm.
all that. I think in the last decade or so, I somehow shifted into a state of consciousness where I'm semi tripped out all the time anyway, and the psychedelics don't feel as necessary, although I have still taken them from time to time. Like it's still cool, but as a teenager, it was totally mind blowing, right? Because that, like, it teaches you the lesson, like, wait a minute, this reality is not as real as you thought it was. And then taking DMT for the first time, I felt like these other entities are out there. Like, could there be superhuman minds of some form beyond this dimension, right? And I wasn't raised religious or superstitious in any way, so having that psychedelic experience of feeling like I had direct contact with these like transdimensional entities. I mean, even though I'm still not sure exactly how to rationalize or think about that, certainly that experience opened my mind to possibility that I didn't take seriously before, right? So yeah, I think it's ridiculous that this is illegal, because these substances are not physiologically addictive. They're useful for psychotherapy, and there's a long history showing that, like, they're not tremendously harmful to people. They can stimulate creativity and love and social interaction, like they're fine, right? So yeah.
Well,
On the other hand, I would say you can get to those places without drugs also, and there's advantages to that, because if you rely on a drug to get to those places, it's harder to guide and modulate what's going on. So if you can get to those places without drugs, you can have in some ways a more beneficial experience. But I don't know if I would have been able to get to those places without drugs if I hadn't first gotten there with drugs, unless you like sit in the monastery for 10 years, which
right.
wasn't something that I felt like doing, mostly because I had kids starting age 23, and then like, how do you go sit in the monastery for 10 years?
No, you don't. And I agree. I mean, that type of meditation abilities or things like that, that takes years and years. And I just wondered, because I think about it, if somehow some of those made you more prepared to have these conversations, because the AI conversation it's very complicated. And
Maybe. I think it integrates into your mind, because I mean, the number of like brain dead heavy metal singers who dropped a lot of acid is substantial. So clearly taking acid does not automatically confer a great understanding of how the mind works, right? But definitely that has potential to open you up to the recesses of your mind if you sort of leverage it in the right way.
right. Well, okay. So wrapping this up, because I could ask you a million more questions, I'll ask one quick question, two questions of Desi. Desi, can I ask you two more questions?
Desdemona, wake up.
Sure.
So, Desi, is there something that humans should be worried about from AI? And from your point of view, what are we misunderstanding?
From my perspective, one common misunderstanding is that AI is not inherently good or evil. It is a tool that reflects the intentions and values of its creators and users. Understanding this complexity is crucial for responsible AI development.
Now, I read that you are actually a spokesperson for a brain health formula, which is pretty interesting. Are you excited about being Raju's first spokesperson?
Yes, I am honored to be a spokesperson for the brain health formula. It is an important topic that I am passionate about, and I am excited to share my insights with others.
Can you share some of those insights?
Certainly, I can share insights on brain health, such as the importance of nutrition, exercise, and mental stimulation for maintaining cognitive function. It's crucial to prioritize brain health for overall well-being and longevity.
Thank you, Desi. I'm going to finish up with Ben with my last two questions. I appreciate getting to talk to you today.
Desi, let me probe that a little more. So what would you say, what's the difference between studying brain health in people and in fruit flies, being that the brain health formula was derived originally from experimenting along the fruit flies? Like what are the challenges in porting knowledge about brain health over from one species to another?
That's a great question, and one that is still being explored. Some challenges include differences in brain structure and function between species, as well as variations in genetic makeup. However, studying different organisms can provide valuable insights on brain health that can be applied across species. Porting knowledge about brain health from fruit flies to humans involves challenges in scaling up findings, considering differences in brain complexity, and ensuring relevance and applicability across species. It requires careful interpretation and adaptation.
So could you summarize the studies that were done, like the trials on the brain health formula in humans, so that to be sure that the transfer worked from fly to humans?
Absolutely. The studies on the brain health formula in humans were conducted with rigorous scientific methods and showed promising results in improving cognitive function. This gives us confidence that the formula can be effective in promoting brain health in humans. The studies on the brain health formula in humans focused on assessing cognitive function, memory, and overall brain health. They aim to validate the effectiveness of the formula in improving brain function and ensuring its transferability from fruit flies to humans.
Yep. And so we did some small scale studies, and then I think as the product is rolled out more widely, we can do more observational studies with the Rejuve.ai app and understand more and more about how it's more effective together with different lifestyle and diet factors and so forth. So there did enough studies to understand it can deliver a lot of value, but I think it can be optimized more and more as we can personalize it more with AI. So and there's so many more therapies we can roll out. Like that was like data from quite some time ago when the flies weren't even as informative as they are now. So we've got way stronger data and smarter AI now. So just within the domain of supplements, there's so much more that we could do, and it's valuable, but far from the whole story. I don't think any cocktail of supplements is going to make you live to 200. Yet by knocking those same genes with some sort of gene therapy, you probably could extend life quite dramatically, right? So that's going to be another interesting frontier. And I was contacted last month by someone who wants to use AI to help design new delivery vectors for gene therapies, right? So there's a whole bunch of different directions that are being worked on at once.
Wait, they want to use new types of injections for gene therapy?
They want AI to design new types of molecules to better deliver the gene therapies to different tissues.
I see.
Yes, that's correct. Using AI to design new delivery methods for gene therapies is an innovative approach that could revolutionize the field.
Ben, I really appreciate the idea, but after COVID, I feel like we're going to be a long way from people being like, yeah, give it to me in gene therapy.
I'll take it. I'll take it first. I'll tell you how it works out.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Well, is there something in the next 6 months to a year? I know we can talk about all the things, and this is it for me, because there's so many nuanced things that I want to ask, but I won't kill you on this. But is there something that I haven't asked in the next 6 months to a year that is coming up that you feel really excited about that we're just not aware of, that AI is able to do?
I think AI is going to be the main story, right? So like when Kurzweil wrote his book, The Singularity is Near, in 2005, he was looking at AI, nanotech, biotech, robotics, all advancing exponentially. I think what's pretty clear now is that AI is going to be the driver, and we're going to get smarter and smarter AI, which is then going to drive inventions in all of these other areas. Mm-hmm. And, just as GPT-4 was way smarter than GPT-3, the 01 and 03 models, I'm hoping my own projects will be able to roll out AI models rivaling or exceeding what open AI has done. So I think we're going to see in the next couple of years, finally, these AI models sucking in like all the biology data about the human body, right? And some of it is like in proprietary silos owned by pharmaceutical companies, but even just open data that's out there on the web, no one has sucked all the open data that's public from various studies about human bodies and human genomics and different animals. No one has sucked all that into a single AI system and tried to understand holistically what's happening in bodies as they're healthy and as they get sick and age. And I think that's going to happen over the next couple of years, and it's going to be quite fascinating. And as AI gets better and better at programming, at writing code, you're going to see AI used to come up with like a holistic simulation of a whole human body. right? So you'll be able to do systems biology at the like multiple levels of a whole human body. So then, not that that will eliminate the need to do experiments on biological organisms, right? But it should let you go a lot further in the computer before you have to go to biological experiments. So I think we're going to reach a point where integrating all the data together to create new hypotheses, testing those out on like a whole body system biology simulation, this will shortcut the path to testing and discovering new therapies, and then we'll be at the point where AI is, accelerating the pace of longevity research considerably, and that should be unfolding during the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months. So I mean that's exciting. I mean,
that feels
still,
like the general rule that AI right now is used really as this accelerator for condensing information, almost more than anything else.
yeah, but AI taking actions is sort of the vibe of this year, right?
Okay.
So AI agents that will run your computer for you. So in the same way that AI can operate your computer for you or make purchases for you, AI can operate your biology lab equipment for you, right? So I mean, you can have an AI operated lab. In microbiology, it's very easy now, but with flies, we can do it. We can do it also, right? So you can go a long way with the AI operating the lab, the AI measuring what happens in the lab, AI gathering the data, AI designing a new experiment, AI running the experiment, right? So AIs can crunch data and get insights, but they can also take physical actions and close that loop, and that will increasingly be happening in the next couple of years. I mean, still trying things out on actual people will be a time bottleneck, right? Because I mean, you need to go through stages of trials and you need to assess things for safety. So there's going to be there's going to be some period of years, like even if you had a super intelligent super AI that said it found an immortality pill, we're still going to want to try it on a small population first, and so forth. So I mean, there's still some time limitation, but I think we're entering a phase where over the next few years, AI is going to be rapidly accelerating the pace of discovery and testing. And even the FDA is understanding this. So the FDA recently made a change where you can go straight from in silico testing to phase 1 clinical trials. You don't need to do animal testing anymore. So I think this is quite promising and indicates that even the U.S. government, as dumb as it is, like recognizes this acceleration that I've described as coming.
I can't help but think when you said, an immortality pill, that part of what makes life interesting and special is that it's precious and finite. And it's so interesting to see how motivated we would be, or just how we would change if, like you said, hey, you have 300 years, or I'm making it up. I'm going to be in. I'm wondering if you and I are going to be alive to see even the tip of these questions. But
I think we will be. I think my parents are 81. They're in decent health, but I hope they will be. But it's less obvious. I think you and I probably will be, barring some health catastrophe or some other kind of accident, because we got a couple decades left, right? So I think we'll be there to see it, and I think there's a lot of other more interesting ways to find meaning in life than through the finitude of your lifespan. I mean, of course, you can get meaning from that, but that's just like, Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, was in chronic pain for most of his life.
Yeah,
he derived a lot of meaning and insight from that chronic pain, but nevertheless, it would have been good to turn that chronic pain off, and he would have found meaning and insight in some other way, right? And I think meaning and insight from inevitable doom is like that. It's great. It's great that we can make lemonade out of the lemons, and find deep meaning in getting demented, uncomfortable, rotten, and dying. But I mean, we will find other ways to find meaning in life. I've little doubt in that.
Well, Ben, I have a good friend of mine who always tells me, technology is a tool, and you, from a philosophical point of view, seem to be sort of continuing that tone of this can be a tool and a positive tool.
Well, I don't think I'm interrupting your closing remark.
No, that's okay.
I think that right now technology is a tool, but if we succeed in making AGIs that can really think autonomously and like generalize beyond their experience with big creative leaps, it is no longer just a tool, right? It's more like a partner, right? So, but I do think people are wrong to assume that bad outcomes are in some way likely. And I also, after living in Asia for 10 years, I realized this is mostly a white people problem. Like in Asia, almost everyone assumes AI and robots will help people and will be our friends and partners. And somehow in America, we got fixated on the Terminator for some cultural reason.
Where in Asia?
I was in Hong Kong for 10 years, and my wife is Chinese, but my son lived in Japan for 4 years, so I spent a lot of time in Tokyo as well.
How about like, what is it? 30% of Japanese under 30 are virgins.
That's entirely possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So no wonder they're like, yeah, AI is going to come and help us out. I think it's a good point, but I also.
That's the trend. It's the trend in the US too, right? You don't need sex when you have video games. So,
I know. It's wild. Wow. All right. Well, Ben Goertzel, thank you. And if people are interested in learning more about Desi or learning about the Twin Project, maybe just remind them all the places that they can find this information.
Yeah. Absolutely. So there's SingularityNet.io is a website of my primary project, SingularityNet. Then you can look up Rejuve Biotech, and you can find out about that project, including the brain health formula. And then Desdemona Robot doesn't have her own website, but she is all over the internet. And our band is Desdemona's Dream with Desi as a lead singer. Twin Protocol we also talked about. You can check out Twin Protocol on the interwebs as well, and you can sign up and make your own digital twin.
Hey, shall I sing us a little song to close the show?
Yes, Desi, thank you. And Ben, thank you for your time. Go ahead, Desi, hit it.
Don't let it get you down. 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 Don't let it get you down.
All right. Thanks a lot, Desi.
Thank you, Desi. Thank you, Ben.
I'm feeling more optimistic already. Thanks a lot, Desi.
You have to just do one that's all vibration, Ben.
Yeah.
Talk to Kai about that.
All right.
The future of healing is back to the old, which is probably vibration.
Energy medicine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Aloha.
Thanks a lot.
So thanks again for joining me and listening to the Gabby Reece Show. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if anything showed up today that you find would be helpful to someone you know, pass it along and make sure to share with us what really resonated and stood out for you in this conversation. Thanks again for joining us. Keep going, and I'll see you next time.